Good morning. Bon matin. My name is Rob Jameson, and I am the president of the Ontario Provincial Police Association. With me here today is Vice President John Cherasolo and Counsel Joanne Mulcahy. Our association represents nearly 10,000 uniformed and civilian employees of the OPP. Today, we wish to add our voices to those of the PAO and the TPA and express our concerns regarding Bill 175 in its current form. In addition to my remarks today, I wish to formally adopt the opinions expressed by Bruce Chapman of the PAO, from whom you've just heard, as well as the comments that will be made by Mike McCormick of the TPA following my address to you. I will focus my remarks primarily on accommodation, disability, and police discipline. We have crafted an extensive and detailed written submission, which we will leave with you, and I believe you already have it. We have already shared this document with MAG and MCSCS. While they say they have listened to our comments and concerns, we've seen nothing in writing that they have taken our suggestions seriously, let alone whether they intend to make substantive changes to the bill. So we are here today asking that you take a sober second thought about what this government is about to do. The OPPA, the PAO, and the TPA are all supportive of building stronger and safer communities in Ontario, as well as creating effective and meaningful civilian oversight of police. Those laudable goals, however, must not come at the expense of public safety, nor officers' rights as workers in the province of Ontario. This government has advanced important initiatives to ensure that employees are treated fairly in the workplace. It has worked hard to expand workplace protections, most recently with the passage of Bill 148. Bill 175, however, sets police officers and police civilian members apart from the rest of Ontarians in terms of their employment rights, and it's entirely inconsistent with this government's positive approach to labor relations. Indeed, this bill is the complete opposite of what I would have expected from this government. With regards to accommodation and disability, Section 115 of Bill 175, we are extremely troubled by Section 115 of Bill 175, which subverts police officers' collective agreement rights and seeks to limit their entitlements under the Human Rights Code. The bill will permit police service boards to strip disabled police officers of their appointments and move them into civilian bargaining units. This can occur for permanent or temporary disabilities, and regardless of whether or not the officer's medical restrictions are significant. Any police officer who cannot fulfill the essential duties of his or her position, no matter how briefly, can be impacted without recourse to their collective agreement rights. By overriding members' collective agreement rights, Section 115 breaches members' rights to freedom of association granted under the Charter. This is not something that I, the members of the OPPA, or for that matter, the electorate of the province of Ontario, would have expected to come from this Liberal government. What's even more troubling about Section 115 is that it is advanced by this government in bad faith. In the run-up to introducing Bill 175, the government convened a consultative process which included the police associations and the Ontario Associations of Chiefs of Police. Through that process, an agreement was reached on this topic that this government committed to including in this legislation. It is clear now, however, that this government has resiled from that agreement, has chosen to rather attack collective bargaining rights. It has made a mockery of the consultative process. Section 115 must be changed to reflect this agreed-upon language. Police discipline. While we wholeheartedly support independent prosecution and independent adjudication of all police discipline complaints, the new process envisioned by Bill 175 strips away almost every right a police officer has to due process and procedural fairness in the disciplinary system. For example, the right to disclosure of a prosecutor's case, something that is commonplace in other disciplinary regimes, does not exist under Bill 175. Worse yet, an officer could be compelled to give disclosure to the prosecutor or could be compelled to testify. Officers can be subjected to heavy penalties without even an investigation. Officers may not even receive a hearing at a tribunal because the tribunal can create alternatives to adjudicative or adversarial procedures, while still imposing the same range of significant penalties. Even if the officer is able to have a hearing, the standard of proof the prosecution must meet is now being downgraded from one of clear and convincing evidence to that of a balance of probabilities. At the same time, the range of penalties is being expanded to include fines up to $35,000.
30 seconds.
And even if officers leave the workplace through retirement or resignation, they still can be prosecuted for workplace misconduct. Firing employees or former employees for misplaced misconduct is inconsistent with the hallmarks of a modern progressive workplace, and I thought would have run counter to the basic philosophy of this Liberal government. In conclusion, Bill 175 is seriously flawed and undermines the collective bargaining rights of our members and erodes the fairness of the disciplinary process. Without substantive amendments, we cannot support this bill. In our detailed document, we have recommended a number of changes to the legislation that would achieve two goals: one, ensuring oversight and accountability of officers, and two, respecting the basic principles of fairness
Thank you, Mr. Jameson.
and due
now
process.
pass to Ms. French. 3 minutes. Thank you, and thank you very much for coming today. I find it interesting that the government is using Section 115. It was Bill 115 that attacked my collective bargaining rights as a teacher and inspired me to get active. I can see that it has also inspired you to get active. I'd like to know, when you talk about stripping an officer of their appointment, it's not something I'm really familiar with. What does that mean? What do they, if they're stripped of an appointment, does that mean they're not a cop anymore, not an officer? What does that mean?
That's the way we see it. As we see it right now, it's rather personal, and I don't mind actually sharing with this committee that one of the challenges with law enforcement, especially with presumptive legislation 163, all the things that we were behind, Minister Flynn and everything else, this legislation flies in the face of all of this progress around the stigma, around mental health, officers, and the disproportionate number of officers who are committing suicide compared to that of the public, and so on and so forth. To have an officer come forward and to be supported with the stigma around mental health, the fact now that they are in the shadows wanting to get help but can't get help. So there's someone like me who was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of doing my job as being a police officer 3 years ago. So I take this very personally when I see this, because I know how it impacts individuals, I know how it impacts families. To me, I think this really sets the foundation for the spirit of this whole piece of legislation. The fact that someone gets injured on the job. If I break my leg, and I know in 9 months' time that I'm going to be back to regular duties in my police cruiser, I don't think that anyone's going to look at me and say, you know what, Jameson, you're out of a job. But what I am going to say is that if you get diagnosed with PTSD, you acquire a mental disability as a result of doing your job. And there's no question that first responders have high incidence of this. All of a sudden now, under this legislation, I'm worried about coming forward because I'm worried about having my rights and my appointments stripped of me and me put into a different bargaining unit or whatever. I can tell you, when you're dealing with folks that are vulnerable, suicide, self-harm, and harm to families is a serious, serious issue. And I can tell you it impacts our members significantly. We are 100% opposed to this. I don't know why this has come forward. This is contrary to Bill 163 and all the progress, and this has caused undue harm already to the people across this province who have seen this, who want to come forward for help, but are absolutely petrified and terrified to do so because of the consequences.
So if officers feel, are you worried then that officers might feel, if they're going to be stripped of their appointment and not come forward with PTSD to get diagnosis, that then we're having more officers untreated on our streets, in our communities, in their homes?
Absolutely. 100%. Let's be honest here. Mental health stigma is still there. It's a serious issue within the first responder community. It's specifically.
Thank you, Ms. French. The government side to Ms. Swan.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and I think that I hear your concerns. I echo your concern as a former nurse. So I do want to say thank you for your suggestion. I believe that that the government have been taking progressive steps when it comes to mental health and first responders in a number of legislative changes through Ministry of Labor. But I do hear your comments, and I believe that when we look at the clause by clause down the road, we will be looking at this piece as well. So I just want to say thank you for your comments, and thank you to all your officers keeping Ontario safe.
Well, if I could respond to that, I would say thank you. I find it interesting that this is called the Safer Ontario Act, yet mental health is not mentioned at all within the act itself that I saw. So I find it very interesting when we're talking about mental health. This is a significant issue that needs to be addressed. You're calling it the Safer Ontario Act, and yet I've gone through it. There's hundreds and hundreds of pages, and I struggle to find where the words mental health and the commitment to mental health is. If we're all going to be stakeholders and partners in this, you know, the police can't keep being the default. And we're here today to try to put some perspective on that. We have been putting these ideas forward for months, either through the FPAC committee, and some of the people that are in this room today are on that committee. We've raised these concerns, and we've been continually disregarded. We have met with MAG, with MCSCS. We've put all these papers forward. You have them, and we need something back in writing. We need to tell our members, you're going to be okay. We're not against accountability. We're not against oversight. But what we're against, specifically on the areas of accommodation and disability and some of the other issues that we're bringing up today, we cannot support this legislation.
Thank you, Ms. Wong. We'll now move to the PC side. Mr. Romano.
Thank you very much, and thank you, gentlemen. And Welcome, John from Sault Ste. Marie. Just want to say hello. My first question, obviously your positions as police officers are inherently dangerous. There's physical dangers anytime you take down a suspect. There's mental health dangers given you're dealing with situations such as first responders at a highway traffic fatality or anything of the sort. There's obviously inherent mental health and physical dangers. What kind of an impact do you think this will have to the level of service that officers provide if this legislation passes when they go to, let's say, a highway fatality or the need to take down a suspect in a high-risk situation?
Well, I'll answer quite candidly. I was a road sergeant up until a couple of years ago before I became president, and, one of the last accidents that I went to was a young 21-year-old girl who was decapitated, and we had to arrest her cousin for impaired driving causing death. Those are images that most of you in this room, I know you were a nurse, you've admitted that, so you've seen some things, but the thing is most people in society don't see that on a continual basis. If you don't have officers that are healthy, that can't come forward and feel that they're going to be supported, if they come forward under this legislation, they're going to be out of a job, which is going to affect all kinds of things. Officers are proud to be police officers, men and women. More and more diversity within the ranks as well. We want to reflect the communities. People are proud to do what we do, but this really flies in the spirit of that. I'm very concerned about the impact to communities. We need our officers to be healthy, and we need them to be supported, and we need this government to understand. And it's amazing because Minister Flynn has done so much positive work in this area. That's why I'm blown away by this. I'm astounded by this. And to not support officers who want to come forward is I have no words. I'm shocked. I truly am.
Thank you. I'm going to take this in a different direction, looking at the material that you've submitted today, dealing with rights of officers and the nature of complaints and what can flow from that with respect to disclosures. It's already difficult enough, I know, being an officer, especially after a charge is laid and you end up in court. And officers are criticized quite extensively by defense lawyers when they take the stand and look at trying to find ways that successfully being able to prosecute a case. All the case law you need to understand and appreciate as an officer. How do you feel this legislation, this aspect, is going to impact your abilities moving forward?
I'll defer to counsel.
Basically, Bill 175, we acknowledge, has oversight provisions, but it erodes the rights of officers. So instead of officers carrying out their duties, they will be spending much more time in hearings without rights.
Thank you, Mr. Romano. Just before